Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we have the Everly Brothers, and this is going to be coming from 1960, and they are going to be playing through All I Have to Do Is Dream and also Kathy's Clown. So let's get Don and Phil up on screen and see how they get on.
Dream, dream, dream when I want you in my arms, when I want you, and all your charms whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, dream, dream when I feel blue in the night. I need you to hold me tight whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, 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 dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream. Dream, 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 dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, 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 dream.
I'm just going to jump in here because that vocal performance, there is such a thing as being tight vocally. I always mention about bands being tight and having a great rhythm section. Exactly the same can be said for vocalists, and especially the Everly Brothers. The way that their voices, first of all, blend so well because they've got a similar tone. It means that you get just a great all-round effect. Sometimes when you have a singer who's got a grating tone or just a piercing tone, and then somebody who's got a softer tone, it doesn't work as well. Whereas these guys, obviously being related helps in terms of having the same kind of vocal cords, so they blend together really well. So the reason that so many people try and sing like this but just can't do it are the subtleties of the technique and how pristine their singing is in terms of their harmony vocals that they put together. Because what you'll find with a lot of harmonies, they are absolutely set in stone. In terms of the notes, you just snap to a note. And even just singing in harmony in the first place is difficult enough. But the Everly Brothers had this ability to slide into notes at exactly the same rate together. So it means that those slides are perfectly in harmony, but they're not hitting one note. They're hitting a slow ascension to one particular note, but all of those variations within that slide, it is endless. So in order to be tight vocally through a vocal slide and a pitch slide is so difficult, because if one singer does it too quickly, they'll be at the end note before the other singer, so it will just go out of sync. And they absolutely nail it. Obviously, they get it to sound absolutely spot on because it is spot on, but they make it look so easy that you don't really notice that it's going on. So that stylized slide that they have into these notes means that when you're listening to these guys sing, it's going to sound different to everybody else because everybody else is just hitting straight notes, because sliding is so difficult to do that in harmony. When you're singing by yourself, it's fine. And that's how these guys just sound so different to everybody else, because they're absolutely spot on. Another thing that absolutely makes the difference, and you won't spot this unless you've had experience with singing and recording and production, is the way that the Everly Brothers end their phrases at exactly the same time. And this would have taken so much rehearsal, and they're probably looking out for particular beats within the composition to end their phrases so that both of their vocals stop at exactly the same time. You'll know this, that if you do record vocals and you've sung with yourself and harmonized with yourself, sometimes the main line that you're singing along with ends quickly or just drags on a little bit too long compared to the harmony line that you've sung, so that your harmony ends a little bit too early or a little bit too late. The Everly Brothers have worked this out so that live they can nail it every time. Their voices stop at exactly the same time. As I said, it's a subtle thing, but it is so impressive to be able to do that. Just literally switch it on and stop those vocals, so you are actually getting a perfect studio take, but live. And let's not underestimate the importance of dynamics in this performance as well, because rewind it if you need to and look out for the way that Phil and Don both lean in to the microphone at exactly the same time when they're singing those slightly softer passages, but they want the volume to come across in exactly the same way as when they stand back and lean into the vocal a little bit more. Again, such rehearsal in order to get that movement exactly the same, and you'll see it. They are perfectly in sync when they move into that microphone and then move back. But there is so much depth in this performance that you might not notice when you're watching it, because it is so well put together, so seamlessly put together that we can just appreciate the art and listen to it. But when you start noticing those dynamics within the vocals, but also within the guitar playing, the way that they lean into that guitar sound in exactly the same way that they would do their vocals, just bringing up the volume of those guitars. And also, by the way, we've got Buddy Holly's crickets in the background here, supplying that extra guitar, and the bass is so smoothly put in there that you don't even notice it, but it's definitely in there. And this would have been just a year and a half, I think, after Buddy Holly's unfortunate death. But I've done a video on Buddy Holly as well, so you can check that out if you want more of a background with Buddy Holly and the crickets. And just to put this performance in perspective, Don would have been 23 at this point, and Phil would have been 21. And generally, it would have been Don that's singing the lower lines and Phil sings the higher lines. But that's, again, something that you'll notice with every performance, is that you're not sure whose voice you're listening to because they are so in sync. You can't really attribute the voice to either of them, but once you know who's singing each part, obviously it gets easier. But watching it for the first time, it's really hard to decipher because their phrasing is so spot on. They absolutely start and end each phrase perfectly in sync. By the way, at the beginning you would have noticed the writing on screen, because this is coming from Reeling in the Years, and I'm going to put a link to this in the description below so you guys can check out the whole video without any interruptions if you want to. But we're going to get back into it now with Kathy's Clown.
Don't want your love anymore. Don't want your kisses, that's for sure. I die each time I hear this sound. Here he comes, that's Kathy's clown. I've gotta stand tall. You know a man can't crawl when he knows you tell lies and he lets them passing by. Then he's not a man at all. Don't want your love shed a tear, and you know that it's sincere. Don't you think it's kind of sad that you're treating me so bad, or don't you even care? Don't want your love anymore. Don't want your kisses, that's for sure. I die each time I hear this sound. Here he comes, that's Kathy's clown. That's Kathy's clown. That's Kathy's clown.
And there we have it, with that classic bow at the end as well, which we had in the video that I was talking about yesterday with the Beatles, where they all do that bow at the end. No doubt they were watching the Everly Brothers, as we know that the Beatles were heavily influenced by the Everly Brothers anyway. But getting into that performance, it's interesting the way that we have these two songs, where the first one, All I Have to Do Is Dream, is very much one of those love songs, and then Kathy's Clown is the total opposite. So you get both of those messages, that you really like a girl and then you don't want anything to do with a girl. So it's an interesting choice to put those two songs together. But in that second song, Kathy's Clown, we then had that single vocal from Don. So it had a little bit of a different take on it because of that lead vocal, but still absolutely spot on with those vocals. And let's just put this in perspective again, totally live here with one mic. And obviously back in the 1960s, just recording on a TV show, they didn't have digital equipment and everything that we have nowadays that we take for granted. But this sound, stick it on a record, and this is studio quality performance in a live setting. And that's what you got from these years in the 60s and the 70s, just classic performances that were timeless because they were so good. You could just stick this on and listen to it like it's a record, whereas nowadays, of course, you have bands that will be in the studio for months and months and months recording a single. And that's just the byproduct of technology nowadays, is that when you do a bad take, you just press the delete button and you can do it all over again. Whereas in these days, if you did a bad take, you had to rewind the tape and do it again and get rid of that tape that you originally did it on because it's now got that bad take on it. Talk about an expensive process to go through if you keep messing up on tape. So this is why the top talent were the guys that you heard, because they were the most efficient artists, not only for getting it down on tape, but also it means that the record labels didn't have to spend lots of money on getting lots of tape in. These guys can nail it first time, so they could get a whole album out of the amount of tape that they've actually purchased, rather than spending time on an artist who is messing up all the time and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on reels of tape. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to get into the history of the Everly Brothers too much in this video, so I might have to do another one. But just quickly, their father was Ike Everly Jr., who was a guitarist, and there was a family friend called Chet Atkins, who, while he was at RCA Records, he organized for Don and Phil to sign to Columbia Records, and they did that in 1956, 4 years before this performance. But unfortunately, that didn't go very well, and they recorded one track and then got dropped from Columbia Records. So the next year, 1957, Chet introduced the brothers to Wesley Rose, and he was from Acuff Rose Music Publishers. And Wesley said to the brothers that if they signed to him as songwriters, then he would get them a record deal with a label. And Wesley was true to his word, and he got them a record deal at Cadence Records, and they recorded their first track called Bye Bye Love. And the interesting thing about this track, this would have been in 1957, it was rejected by 30 artists previously in terms of the song, but the Everly Brothers took it on and it turned out to be a massive hit. They were only beaten to #1 by an artist called Elvis Presley, and that song went on to become their first ever million-selling song. And that track was actually written by the songwriters Felice and Boudleaux Bryant, and they did a lot of work together in the future from this point onwards. And All I Have to Do Is Dream was also a collaboration with those songwriters, even though the Everly Brothers did write themselves, but they saw themselves more as interpretive artists than songwriters, but they did have the ability to write. And just on that point, Don's track Till I Kissed You actually got to number 4 in the US pop charts, so that was one of Don's originals. So they did have that ability, like I mentioned, even though they did collaborate with other songwriters on a lot of their other hits as well. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have time to get into all of it, but just quickly, there is more to the story, to the Acuff Rose publishing company, because the Everly Brothers wanted to release Temptation, and that wouldn't have been licensed by any of the writers at Acuff Rose. So the publishing company tried to stop them from releasing that track, but the Everly Brothers released it anyway, so it meant that Acuff Rose then cut off the Everly Brothers to their songwriters, which were the songwriters who they were working with on these tracks, like All I Have to Do Is Dream, and all of those collaborations they had. The ridiculous thing is, because the Everly Brothers were signed to Acuff Rose as writers, it means that they couldn't write anything themselves because all of that money would go to that publishing company. So then the Everly Brothers invented a name that they wrote under to pretend that somebody else wrote the track, but then they got found out, and then they set up their own publishing company and then used another name to try and make sure that they could get the money for the songs that they were writing themselves. Again, this whole business and music industry side that takes over, it means that because the Everly Brothers were under contract with Acuff Rose, anything they wrote, Acuff Rose took all the money. They didn't actually earn anything for themselves, or they would only get the tiny percentage that was in their contract. Whereas they thought, well, if we're writing the songs, we want to get the money for the songs, and hence why they broke away. But unfortunately, the publishing company that the Everly Brothers started didn't do very well, and that went bankrupt, unfortunately. But again, not going to have time to get into all of it, but these same themes that come up with artists, publishing companies, and record labels, it's all about the business, all about the money. And if the publishing company isn't making the money, then they really do kick up a stink, and unfortunately the artists are the ones that bear the brunt of it. But it's great to just look at pure artistry like we've got in this video, so thank you so much for suggesting this one for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!